when I'm teaching about exceptional leadership and creating predictable results on our teams, a significant amount of what we do as leaders is delegating and overseeing. And so, where previously in a different position, um, all of our accolades, all of our measurements, all of our results were based on what we did individually. Now, a lot of those things are what we encourage and can instill and get other people to do, right? And it's a little bit of a mindset shift because previously we could just put forth the effort and we could make sure it gets done if it's something we intended to get done. But in this case, we now are charged with getting other people to do things. And the shift also is that that's where our pats on the back come from seeing somebody else win, right? Um, so the first part that is really important to understand is how our brains work, because when we understand how we think and how we operate, we can generally understand how other people may be thinking and how they may be operating. And then from there, we can go into creating environments of trust based on that knowledge, and then into some of the specifics of exceptional leadership. Today, we're going to talk about understanding the brain. Carol Dweck, if you haven't read her book it's called Mindset, it's fantastic. But Carol Dweck says true self-confidence is the courage to be open, to welcome change and new ideas, regardless of their source. Real self-confidence is not reflected in a title or an expensive suit, a fancy car, or a series of acquisitions. It's reflected in your mindset, in your readiness to grow. So, in order to have new or better outcomes, we have to operate from different thinking. And in order to operate from different thinking, we have to experiment with new ideas. Now, new and different are not things that our brain loves, especially at its baseline. In fact, what our brain really, really loves are things that are comfortable and easy and familiar and pleasurable. Anything that's uncomfortable or scary, or it looks like it's going to take some work from us, or it's going to cause change, those things we naturally resist. And you can look at your life, I can look at my life and see where that shows up. So anytime I'm embarking on I think health is an excellent parallel for this. If I'm going to do a new exercise routine, it's fine to do it for like a day or two. But if I'm like looking at it saying, yeah, this is what I'm going to do for the next 6 months, that's a little daunting. And it's not so much that I can't do the physical activity or find the time even to do the activity. It's really the commitment. And the reason our brains don't like that is it's change. It has a way of doing things. It's tried and true. It's proven. And that's the way it likes to do things. Um, so I'm going to gravitate back towards whatever I've been doing, however often I've been working out, however I've been eating. I'm going to find reasons why those are good enough, or just a slight change would be appropriate rather than some drastic change, climbing some big mountain or taking on some big feat. So today I want to take a little bit of time and really think about our thinking. Today's lesson is really about getting really meta. So it can be a little bit of a mind trip, because our thoughts, when we're growing up, a lot of times, I don't know if you remember this, but when we're growing up, a lot of times our thoughts kind of sound like the people we heard most. Maybe that was a parent or a teacher, and you can almost hear their voice in your head. And then as you grow older and decide what your beliefs are and decide what your perspectives are, our thoughts come to us and it sounds like our own voice, which makes them really believable. But in fact, they're just options. And so if we can look at our thoughts more as options rather than facts, and we can really get into the habit of questioning all of them, we have the ability to shift our perspective and open ourselves up to different ways of doing things, being things, responding to things that actually benefits us a whole lot more. All of my work is about figuring out how to optimize and maximize what we have as individuals so that we can help others do the same thing. So I want to talk to you about a tool that I have, and I abbreviate it TTFAO. It's a 5-step system. I did not create this. This is my way of teaching it, but there are thousands of ways of looking at this. You can cross-reference it about 100 times if you want to in a quick Google search. This is true It happens in all of our experiences, all of our thought processes, all of our interactions with others. There's always this TTFAO or 5-step process happening. So I want to describe it. The first thing that happens is there's a trigger. And this is happening right now. The sound of my voice could be a trigger. You sitting at your computer could be a trigger. The time of day, a scent, certain words and phrases. You might hear a song. These are all triggers. And our triggers are often the things that we attribute our feelings or our moods to. I might be like, well, I'm frustrated because of what he said, or I'm anxious because of the thing that just happened. When in actuality, those are just the triggers. Okay. They're just context for step 2, which is our thought. And the reason that it's so important to recognize this is because if we're questioning, first of all, if we're aware of what our thoughts are, and then we're questioning our thought, we can get really intentional about whether or not we want to believe those thoughts that accompany our trigger. So we have a trigger. Let's say we hear a song, and then we're going to have a thought about that song. It might remind us of something that's exciting to us or something that we would love to relive. It might bring us back to a really dark place or a sad moment in our life. Some of the thoughts we might have, she doesn't deserve that. I want one of those. This is too hard. That's not fair. He's rude. All of those thoughts, even if we have like a collection of evidence to support each one, they are just our opinion. They're just our perspective. And I don't say just to minimize the experience we may be having in that moment. I say just because it's optional. And if it doesn't feel good or serve us, it's worth recognizing that we have the option to shift from that thought process. So after we have our thought in place, that leads us to create a feeling. It's not the other way around. We're not having a feeling because of someone. Our thought creates our feelings. So if I'm thinking, he's rude, then my feeling is going to be something along the lines of frustration or anger or whatever, annoyed, something like that. If I'm excited about what's happening, if I'm like, ooh, I want one of those, I might be feeling a sort of excitement or an anticipation. Our feelings always follow a thought. And then from that feeling, it's an action driver. So we might eat or text, complain. We might clench our jaw. I like to tighten my shoulders. Sometimes my shoulders are up to my ears. I may have already mentioned that to you because it happens so frequently when I'm stressed out. I literally look like I have no neck. We might spend money or make a plan or do nothing. We may be stalled out and just procrastinate taking action. We might sleep or pray or run. Whatever action we're taking it from the feeling that we're having. And then, of course, our actions have everything to do with our results, our outcomes. So play this through in your mind and kind of think through the most pivotal parts, which are the thought, feeling, action. I say most pivotal because really that trigger, that song that you heard, my voice, somebody saying something that you've perceived as rude, those are all just context for the thought that we choose. Okay. For example, on the example where I said he's rude, maybe it was something he said or a facial expression or a gesture that he made. That's the context. And the thought I chose was he's rude. Somebody else looking in on that same situation could hear his words or see his facials and think, oh, he's having a bad day. And their experience of that person is going to be totally different than mine, where I'm personalizing it and thinking that he's rude and I'm trying to figure out why is he treating me this way. Somebody else might be thinking, gosh, I wonder what I can do to help him. It looks like he's going through a really rough time. And it's all just our perspective, right? And what I like to do is figure out, okay, if I'm feeling like crap right now, I like to trace it backwards and go, that's my feeling. There must be a thought underneath that. What is the thought? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you can identify the thought and switch it on and off like a light switch, but it does mean that you can get really playful with it and be like, okay, if that's the thought that I'm having, do I want to keep having this thought? What else could I think? What else might be true? And just kind of play with the situation a little bit until you can land on something that is both believable for you in that situation and useful for you for your emotional fuel. Some of the most common disempowering thoughts that people have are identifying people or things as the cause. So he bothers me. She makes me mad. It made me sad. They hurt my feelings. We're taught to think this way. And I even have to watch myself when I'm talking to my kids because I think we were trained this way growing up. But really, people and situations aren't the cause of our thoughts and feelings. We are, and we can change that at any time. I wanted to share with you two recent examples. These are client examples. Let me pull them up that I think are just important to know because when we're thinking about leading our teams and encouraging people to create the results that we're wanting to see in our practices, it can be easy to forget that everybody is dealing with something that we have no idea about. We want to create thought filters that are beneficial for us. Um, One really great way to do this is to start finding out what's right, what's going right with people. What do we like about these team members? What do we like about that doctor? Because then our brain naturally wants to follow that pattern and find more things that it likes, more things that are right, more things that are good. And it makes the unpleasant things a little more palatable. But the way that we process it and our ability to just step back for a second and reframe how we want to approach the situation can absolutely impact our experience. In other words, if either way, all the things aren't going to get done, I can either have a miserable time doing the ones that I can, or I can put in a really good effort and have a lot of joy while I'm doing it